If you were born in the 80s, it's very likely that you've seen the classic Waterworld starring Kevin Costner. But if you've missed it or your memory fails you, here's a basic spoiler. In the movie, Kevin Costner lives in a post-apocalyptic future where the Earth as we know it has become nothing more than a legend surrounded only by the sea. In this world covered by water, he is transformed into a kind of fish man with gills that allow him to live in the sea without needing dry land to survive. Incredible, right? But what if I told you that there is a real population that also seems to have almost superhuman abilities at sea? That's right. We're talking about people who, over the years, have undergone physical adaptations that allow them to stay underwater for a long time. Today, Bello Mundo takes you to meet the Sama-Bajau, the true gypsies of the sea. This group from Southeast Asia defies the limits of what human nature can do, and you'll only believe it when you see it. Number 1. The Sea Gypsies. When you hear the word gypsies, the image that comes to mind is of nomadic groups crossing distant lands with their wagons, isn't it? But what many people don't know is that there are also gypsies who live at sea, the Sama-Bajau, a community that has been sailing the waters of Southeast Asia for over 3,000 years. And it's no exaggeration to say that they literally live at sea. Some spend months, even years, without setting foot on dry land. They live in small boats called lepa, where they fish, sleep, and raise their families. For them, dry land is only for the essentials, such as small trades or religious events. The sea, which for many is hostile territory, for the Sama-Bajau has become a welcoming home, where each generation has perfected the way of living and surviving on the water. Number 2. Location and geographical data of Tawi. Distributed throughout various regions of Southeast Asia, they live mainly in the coastal areas of Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Of all these regions, it is in Tawi, in the far south of the Philippines, that we find the largest concentration of these people. Tawi is part of the Sulu archipelago and is or was known for its crystal-clear waters and impressive natural landscapes. However, despite its beauty, the region faces serious environmental problems. The proximity to urban areas has resulted in growing pollution, especially with the accumulation of plastic, which harms both the ecosystem and the traditional way of life of the Sama-Bajau. What used to be a clean sea, where these gypsies could fish and dive with ease, is now being choked by garbage. Plastic, brought in both by the tides and by the very adoption of the material in the daily life of the villages, has compromised the balance that these people maintained with the ocean. Despite these challenges, Tawi remains the main center of maritime culture in the Philippines, where the relationship with the sea remains strong, even in the face of modern adversity. Number 3. Way of life. The Sama-Bajau have a lifestyle deeply connected to the sea, and this is reflected in every aspect of their daily lives. They live in floating houses or in small villages built on stilts in the middle of the ocean or in coastal areas. For them, the sea is much more than just a resource. It is the essence of who they are. Fishing is what drives these people, and we're not talking about just any fishing. They are true diving masters. Without the need for modern equipment, they snorkel to catch fish and seafood, and look at them. Their ability to stay underwater has been passed down from generation to generation. No wonder they even attract the attention of scientists who are curious to understand how they manage this feat. In the past, they were totally nomadic, spending much of their time in their boats, the famous lepa, sailing from island to island in search of the best fishing grounds. Today, many people have settled in permanent villages, but some families still follow the old semi-nomadic style, spending entire seasons at sea, always in search of the sustenance that the ocean offers. The community is strong and close-knit, with families helping each other with everything, be it fishing or maintaining the boats. The wooden walkways that connect the houses serve as makeshift streets, where the children run around and the adults meet to chat or solve everyday tasks. Number 4. Vision underwater. Now, if you think you've seen it all when it comes to diving, wait until you see the Bajau's underwater vision. It's not just that they're great divers, that would be impressive enough, but what's really surprising is how they see underwater. It's like they have fish eyes. From an early age, the Bajau start diving and soon develop a unique ability. They can see much more clearly than most of us. And what's more, without diving goggles. Number 5. Lung capacity. If you've already been impressed by the Bajau's vision, get ready for another fascinating curiosity. Their lung capacity is simply surreal. While most of us can hold our breath for a few seconds, or at most, minutes, the Bajau are able to stay submerged for up to 13 minutes and dive to depths of up to an impressive 60 meters. But how is this possible? Well, the Bajau seem to have a genetic advantage in this regard. A recent study revealed that they have a mutation in their DNA that makes their spleens larger than normal. And why is this important? You may not know it, but the spleen is just as important for diving as a lung. Science explains that the spleen functions as a kind of oxygen tank in our body, releasing red blood cells full of oxygen when we dive. In other words, with a larger spleen, they have more breath to stay underwater for longer. Number 6. Borac Paste. But do you know what they haven't developed? Scales. That's right, they still have skin, and you don't have to be a genius to know that sun and sea together can be a terrible combo for the skin. So, as a solution, the Bajau adapted and Borac was born, a traditional sunscreen made from ground rice and spices. This natural sunscreen is applied to the face and body, protecting the skin during long fishing days, as well as keeping it moisturized and crack-free. That's right, if the body can't adapt on its own, they do. Number 7. Muslim population. The majority of the Sama-Bajau follow Islam, which was introduced to them via the sea routes that connected the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia. However, there are variations within the group. Some follow Sunni Islam more strictly, while others blend their ancient beliefs, such as the veneration of sea spirits known as jinns. Despite these variations, the majority of the Sama-Bajau are Muslim. In the more Islamized villages, the mosque is the community's meeting place, where both prayers and important discussions take place. Number 8. Economy, fishing, and the fish market. And as you might expect, if the Sama-Bajau live by the sea, their economy is also totally linked to it. The ocean is the Bajau's main provider, offering not only food, but also products that they sell in local markets. As well as securing their own food, they sell their catch at nearby markets, exchanging fresh fish for items they can't find at sea, such as rice, clothes, and tools. And with tourism growing in the regions where they live, many Bajau have started offering boat trips and cultural experiences, generating a new source of income. But at the end of the day, the sea is still what keeps everything going. Number 9. Food. As with the economy, the Sama-Bajau's food is also practically taken from the sea. Fish is the main component of their meals, and they prepare it in various ways, grilled, boiled, or dried in the sun to preserve it for longer. In addition to fish, seafood such as squid, shellfish, and prawns also feature prominently in daily meals. The preparation method is simple but tasty. Local herbs and spices such as pepper, garlic, and ginger are used to season the dishes, while rice serves as the basic accompaniment when available. In some villages, especially the more remote ones, rice is a rare and expensive item, which makes the Bajau look for alternatives in the sea itself. Another interesting element in the Bajau diet is the use of seaweed and marine plants, which complement the diet rich in marine proteins, as well as supplementing income, which we'll talk about in more detail in a moment. But unfortunately, the scenario is changing. Remember the pollution we mentioned at the beginning? Well, that's just one of the many problems facing this community, and the list, unfortunately, is long. Number 10. Lack of fresh water. And when it comes to challenges, perhaps one of the biggest for the Sama-Bajau is the lack of fresh water. Living in floating villages in the middle of the ocean has its disadvantages, and getting drinking water for daily consumption is one of them. They rely on rain to collect fresh water, but when it doesn't fall, the situation gets complicated. Often, the Bajau have to sail to nearby villages to fetch water or trade it for fish and other resources. This dependence on external sources for something so basic makes life even more difficult, especially during long periods of drought or when political conflicts interrupt trade between the islands. In some places, they have even managed to build wells on nearby islands, but this doesn't always solve the problem, as these sources can dry up or become contaminated. Number 11. Falling fish numbers in recent years. If there's one thing that has been worrying the Sama-Bajau in recent times, it's the decline in the number of fish in the waters that have always been their source of life. The increase in industrial fishing, growing pollution, especially from plastic, and climate change have seriously affected marine ecosystems. For a community that depends almost entirely on the sea, this reduction in fishing represents a direct threat to survival. With fewer fish available, many Bajau are forced to fish further afield, which increases risks and costs, or to look for economic alternatives, such as tourism, to ensure their families' livelihoods. However, much has been reinvented. Number 12. Seaweed exports. In recent years, the Sama-Bajau have started to cultivate and export seaweed, which has become an important source of income for the community. Seaweed cultivation is carried out in shallow waters and involves the use of floating lines to which the seedlings are tied. This cultivation has significant economic value, especially for the extraction of carrageenan, a substance used in the food and pharmaceutical industries as a stabilizer and thickener. In the Tawi-Tawi region of the Philippines, approximately 80% of the population makes a living from seaweed production. This activity has grown in importance with the increasing demand in international markets, especially in Asia, where seaweed is widely used. This new source of income has helped the Sama-Bajau diversify their economic activities, complementing fishing and providing greater economic stability in the face of the difficulties they face with the decline in fish and the other natural challenges that are our next topic. Number 13. Problems with storms, earthquakes, and tsunamis. Living at sea is definitely not for the faint-hearted, and the Sama-Bajau know this very well. They constantly face the challenges of storms, earthquakes, and tsunamis. These natural disasters pose a constant threat, especially to their villages built on stilts, which are always vulnerable. But despite the difficult scenario, the Sama-Bajau have an advantage. In addition to their physical adaptations to the marine environment, they seem to have a deep connection with the ocean. It's almost as if they speak the language of the waters. A striking example of this occurred in the tsunami of 2004, which devastated several areas along the Indian Ocean, including the coasts of Thailand, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and India. This tragedy claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, but the small village of Moken, located on the coast of Thailand, had a different outcome. Although the village was completely destroyed, there were no deaths. The reason? The inhabitants detected the tsunami in time, recognized signs that something was wrong, and alerted both the local population and tourists. Everyone managed to evacuate to higher ground before the gigantic waves hit. That particular episode had a happy ending. But the list of challenges they face is not over. There are still diplomatic issues. Number 14. Political problems with Malaysia and isolation of the region. In the past, life for the Bajau was much simpler. They maintained trade routes, exchanging their valuable catch, such as fish, pearls, and sea cucumbers, for items that the sea couldn't offer, such as metal, textiles, and agricultural products. However, even with this active exchange, they were victims of exploitation by colonial powers such as the British, Japanese, and Thais. In addition, the Bajau have always been treated with contempt and considered stateless, marginalized, and seen as outcasts by the society around them. A scenario of prejudice that, unfortunately, still persists in many respects. Currently, the situation has been further complicated by political issues affecting the region, especially on the borders between the Philippines and Malaysia. With the rise of insurgent groups such as the Abu Sayyaf, political instability has only intensified. This has led to an increase in commodity prices and the imposition of severe restrictions on movement at the borders. The result? The Bajau, who have always depended on trade and frequent travel, now face forced isolation. And as if all this wasn't complicated enough, there's another aggravating factor: tourism. In recent decades, there has been a huge increase in visitors to the coastal areas where the Sama-Bajau live, creating a new economic dynamic. This includes attempts by Southeast Asian governments, such as those in Thailand, Myanmar, and Indonesia, to integrate the Bajau into mainstream society, often by force, or to place them on islands to serve as tourist attractions. These policies end up drastically disfiguring their culture. Many of those who were driven away from the sea are now exploited in dangerous and poorly paid jobs, as many of them are illiterate. Those who still live at sea also face a difficult reality. With fishing banned in many areas in favor of industrial fishing, they are often forced to work for that same industry in extremely precarious conditions. The situation is further aggravated by the involvement of many Bajau in illegal activities, such as fishing with explosives and coral mining, often in conditions analogous to slavery. Number 15. Why they insist on this way of life. Faced with so many challenges, lack of resources, natural hazards, political changes, you might ask yourself, why do the Sama-Bajau continue to live this way? The answer is simple. The sea is their home. As much as modernity tries to drag them onto dry land, the Bajau insist on preserving their way of life. For them, the sea is more than a source of food. It is part of their identity. Their traditions, their culture, and even their genetics have been shaped by generations of living in the ocean. It's not just about surviving, it's about belonging to the sea. And so we come to the end of our adventure on the high seas. If the life of the Sama-Bajau has inspired you to explore new frontiers, don't stop here. Dive even deeper into our channel and discover other fascinating peoples, cultures, and stories that will take you further than you ever imagined. And to make sure you don't miss a thing, activate the little bell and stay up to date with our next adventures. If you're not already part of our community, sign up now and come and travel with us in this incredible Bello Mundo. To those of you who have watched this far, thank you very much and see you next time.